The story begins with a young boy, Morgan, having a disturbing nightmare. In the dream, he sees water everywhere, and it even seems to come out of his abdomen. This dream keeps returning because it is connected to a real event from his past. About a year earlier, Morgan nearly drowned, but his grandfather Roy saved him just in time. Morgan survived, yet the incident left deep emotional trauma, and he still suffers from frequent nightmares that keep him upset. Morgan is a very shy child who struggles to connect with other kids. He has no friends and often feels lonely. Even when he tries to socialize, other children avoid him, which lowers his confidence even more. Recently, Morgan and his family moved to a new place, so everything around him is unfamiliar. His parents understand his struggle, but they know he eventually has to adjust. To help him, Morgan's parents decide to send him to a summer camp where he might finally make some friends. Morgan is not excited about the idea, but his grandfather Roy encourages him, saying the change could be good for him. Before he leaves, Roy gives him a Swiss knife as a gift that once belonged to his own father. Morgan treasures it because he shares a special bond with Roy. However, the moment suddenly turns tragic when Roy feels severe chest pain and collapses. He passes away from a heart attack on the spot. Morgan is left deeply heartbroken because he always saw his grandfather as his protector and the one person who truly understood him. As time passes, Morgan's parents decide not to cancel the summer camp, hoping it might help bring some change in his life. Before leaving, his mother tells him to enjoy the experience and control his sugar intake, since eating too many sweets often triggers his nightmares. The scene then shifts to the camp, where the organizers are preparing for the children's arrival. These include Rachel, Franklin, Avery, Caswar, and his girlfriend, Lori. Their supervisor, Collins, manages the camp every year, and everyone is busy getting things ready. However, it soon becomes clear that Caswar and Lori are careless and don't take the camp very seriously, while Franklin handles his work properly. Soon, the camp fills with the voices of arriving children, and Morgan's family brings him there as well. Rachel welcomes them and gives Morgan a card to write his name, but his mother writes it herself. Rachel doesn't like this because Morgan's parents seem to pamper him, while the camp is meant to help children become independent. When they try to walk him to the cabin, Rachel politely stops them, saying parents are not allowed inside, so they say goodbye and leave. Inside the cabin, Morgan meets CJ, the boy sharing the room with him. CJ is a spoiled kid and the son of Morgan's father's friend. Morgan never liked him, and CJ often bullies him, so staying with him for days feels like a nightmare. CJ's friends also dislike Morgan. Later, during the briefing, Morgan meets a friendly girl named Pilar. Nearby, a boy named Dirk is listening to affirmations, showing he also struggles with confidence. Caswar asks his name, mocks the way he wrote it, and takes Dirk's device since devices are not allowed at the camp. Dirk then stands beside Morgan, and they briefly talk. Soon, Collins announces their first activity, a swim test. Hearing this shocks Morgan because water is his biggest fear. With courage, he tells Franklin he doesn't want to swim, and they accept his request. CJ immediately mocks him and pushes him down, making the other kids laugh. Morgan feels very embarrassed. Collins arrives, scolds everyone, and takes CJ to the office, warning him to behave. But CJ and his friend keep laughing, so Collins sends them out, showing how spoiled they are. Later that night, during the campfire, Morgan sits with Dirk, Raj, and Sam. They talk and slowly begin forming a friendship. At one moment, Morgan feels someone is watching them from behind a tree, but when he looks again, no one is there, so he ignores it. The kids then ask for a story, and Rachel tells a scary legend about the place. She says that before the camp existed, a doctor lived there with his family. During the day, he performed surgeries to save lives, but at night, he secretly did disturbing experiments in his basement, joining different body parts together. He had one strict rule: no one could enter the basement. One day, his wife discovered the truth and tried to escape with the children, but the doctor stopped them. Not wanting to lose his family, he forced them together as part of his experiments. The children listened carefully, especially Morgan and his friends. Rachel adds that people say the doctor still wanders the forest and hunts children who leave their cabins at night to continue his experiments. Just then, Caswar suddenly jumps from behind and scares everyone, turning the moment into laughter. Later, while returning to the cabins, Pilar walks Morgan back because he still seems nervous. When Morgan asks if the story could be real, Pilar says camps often create such stories so children follow the rules. While Morgan is in the washroom, he suddenly notices water dripping from the door. This triggers visions of his drowning incident, even though he is awake. Following a strange sound outside, he briefly sees a man wearing a surgical suit who looks like the doctor from the scary camp story. Since the story is already on his mind, fear quickly takes over. Morgan runs to the counselors and tells Rachel and Franklin that someone is inside his cabin. They remind him that his file mentions frequent nightmares, so it is probably his imagination. To reassure him, Franklin walks back to the cabin with him, but they find no one there. Morgan eventually goes to sleep. The next day, he talks with Pilar, and before leaving, she gives him 3 chocolates. That night, Morgan notices CJ angrily searching through his belongings. When Morgan asks about it, CJ snaps at him, pushes him aside, and storms out. The incident makes Morgan so uncomfortable that he stays inside the cabin. Later, Franklin checks on him, and Morgan asks if he can change rooms. Franklin explains that everyone at camp is different, but they should not give up on each other, and Morgan understands. The next day, Morgan tells Pilar that CJ's behavior seemed strange. At that moment, CJ appears, likely having heard them. He asks Morgan to talk privately and takes him to the lake. At first, he seems calm, but suddenly he pushes Morgan into the water. Morgan's worst fear becomes real. Since he cannot swim and is panicking, he begins to drown. Raj quickly arrives and pushes CJ away, but CJ attacks him and repeatedly punches him. Soon, Caswar reaches the lake, pulls Morgan out, and tries to revive him with CPR. During this terrifying moment, Morgan imagines his grandfather, Roy. CJ keeps attacking Raj until Collins arrives and separates them. Morgan soon regains consciousness, but everyone is shaken. CJ nearly caused serious harm to both boys, yet he is not removed from the camp and still remains Morgan's roommate, raising the question of why the counselors are not taking his behavior seriously. That night, while Morgan rests, his friends come to check on him. Raj already looks better and doesn't seem badly hurt. Soon, Collins arrives, asks them to leave so Morgan can rest, and brings him cocoa milk. He also says they will deal with CJ, and Morgan shouldn't worry before leaving. Morgan doesn't drink the cocoa milk, but eats the chocolates Pilar gave him, which triggers another nightmare. In the dream, he again sees water and his grandfather. When he wakes up, CJ is missing from his bed, and light is coming from a nearby cabin. Taking his knife, Morgan quietly walks toward it. Inside, he finds a room that looks like an operation room. When he pulls the curtain aside, he sees CJ lying on a table as if surgery is being performed on him, just like the doctor story about experiments. Morgan is shocked, and before he reacts, a man in a surgeon's suit tries to grab him. Morgan stabs the man's leg with his knife and runs back to his friends. He wakes them and explains that the doctor from the story is real and experimenting on the kids. Raj doesn't believe him because earlier trouble already got him hurt, but suddenly the doctor appears and knocks Raj unconscious with a taser, making the other kids panic and run. Soon, the noise wakes more children, and the doctor starts using the taser on them too. The counselors hear the chaos and Rachel calls all the kids to the mess hall. Morgan refuses to go without Pilar, so he and his friends run to warn her. Pilar's friend Caroline doesn't believe them until the doctor shocks some kids nearby, proving the danger is real. They stop near the place where Rachel is still calling everyone to the mess. Dirk suggests going there because adults are present, but Morgan says they can't trust anyone right now, so they hide inside a shed. Meanwhile, Franklin tries to stop the doctor, but the doctor pushes him down. All the children are terrified, and Rachel and Collins try to calm them. At the same time, Morgan and his friends discuss what to do. Sam and Caroline suggest escaping by crossing the lake, but Morgan is afraid of water. When Pilar asks why, Morgan explains how he once almost drowned and was saved by his grandfather. He tells them to leave by boat without him, but Dirk refuses to abandon him. Suddenly, they hear someone approaching and hide. It turns out to be Caswar searching for the kids, but they still don't trust him. Sam, however, steps outside. Caswar assures him everything is fine and asks where the others are, but just then, the doctor appears. Instead of protecting Sam, Caswar hands him over, and the doctor knocks him unconscious with a taser. Morgan's suspicion becomes true. Caswar is working with the doctor. The remaining kids panic and run while Caswar chases them, and Caroline stays hidden in the shed. Meanwhile, in the mess hall, Rachel is calming the children when the doctor enters with a taser and knocks them unconscious one by one. Outside, many kids are already lying unconscious. Caroline runs through the forest, but slips, and a sharp piece of wood pierces her leg. She painfully removes it and keeps moving until she hears a car nearby. Luckily, it is a police officer who rescues her. Caroline begs him to save the others, and he drives toward the camp. At the same time, Morgan and the others reach Franklin, who has a head injury. He tells them to go to Collins's office and call the police. Morgan tries calling, but the phone only repeats a message and doesn't connect. While there, Morgan notices CJ's file describing his anger issues and other behavioral symptoms. The scene then shifts to the counselors gathered together. Just then, the doctor enters, and it turns out to be Avery, one of the counselors. This reveals that all of them are working together. For now, we learn that Franklin betrayed them by helping the kids, likely because he didn't agree with using tasers on children. Rachel angrily asks where Morgan and the others are, and Franklin admits he sent them to Collins's office. Caswar goes to bring them back. When Dirk sees him coming, he tells Morgan and Pilar to hide and decides to take revenge because Caswar earlier mocked his name. Caswar can't open the door, so he steps back to break it. As he charges forward, Dirk suddenly opens the door, causing Caswar to crash into a table and get injured. Dirk then hits him with a bat and knocks him unconscious, but Rachel arrives and shocks Dirk with a taser. Soon, the police officer who rescued Caroline arrives, but Rachel shocks him too, revealing he is also involved. The officer tells Rachel to bring everything under control, and she orders everyone to follow the protocol. However, they don't know that Morgan and Pilar are still in Collins's office. Inside, Morgan finds the children's files. In CJ's file, he notices something strange. Along with the date of birth, a date of death is also written. Shocked, Morgan checks his own file and sees the same thing. Remembering the moment he almost drowned, he begins to panic and realizes something disturbing. Outside, several vans arrive to take the children away, and Collins is part of the operation. He is angry because the plan has gone wrong. Every night, they performed procedures on the kids and used drugged cocoa milk to keep them unconscious, just like the drink given to Morgan. But Morgan didn't drink it that night, so he woke up and discovered everything. While they are arguing, Morgan and Pilar suddenly appear holding a taser. Morgan then asks them a shocking question. Are we already dead? Rachel tells Morgan and Pilar to stay calm as they keep asking if they are dead. Collins takes the taser from them and explains they are not dead because they were never truly born. The real Morgan drowned a year earlier, and the boy we see now is a robotic version of him. Collins reveals this project began years ago after he lost his son Benjamin. Unable to accept the loss, he created a robotic version of his child and later started helping other families who had lost their children. These kids are not fully mechanical. Parts of them are biological as well. Franklin arrives, clearly angry because the events of the night were never supposed to happen. He also feels sympathy for the children. Collins insists they are robots, not humans, and says he never meant harm. Tired of the chaos, he leaves. Franklin then asks everyone else to leave and promises to reset Morgan and Pilar so they will forget everything that happened. This explains why the children were being shocked with tasers, so their systems could later be reset. In reality, all the kids at the camp are robots. Even so, their bodies and emotions closely resemble those of humans, which is why the truth shocks Morgan and Pilar. Franklin explains that Collins created them, while the counselors act like programmers who maintain their systems. Each robot replaces a child who has already died, which is why every file includes both a birth date and a death date. Because robots cannot grow naturally, they return to this camp every year for 2 months. During that time, adjustments are made so their bodies match their growing age. The night procedures are actually these adjustments and repairs. If a system problem appears, it is fixed the same way, which is what Collins was doing with CJ. That is also why CJ was not removed from the camp. When Pilar asks about the scary doctor story, Franklin explains it was only a made-up tale to keep the children inside their cabins at night. Normally, these robots never learn the truth. Everyone around them carefully avoids saying anything that could reveal it. Over time, the system has become normal, and the robots are even officially registered like citizens. After what happened tonight, their systems will simply be rebooted, and they will forget everything as if nothing happened. Collins gives Morgan and Pilar a choice. They can forget everything and wake up the next morning like normal kids with no memory of the truth, or they can keep their memories and live knowing what they really are. The scene cuts, and the next morning, all the children start their day normally, forgetting everything that happened the night before. CJ also seems completely normal again. Only Morgan and Pilar remember the truth because they chose not to erase their memories, and only Franklin knows about their decision. Morgan's fear of water is also gone, since he now understands his reality. Meanwhile, Collins talks with a man who reports that many camps have sent warnings about these robots developing malfunctions. Similar to CJ becoming aggressive, the situation is getting harder to control, so something must be done soon. Collins assures him he will fix everything. However, Collins doesn't realize Franklin has made a serious mistake. A similar malfunction has now appeared in Pilar. Perhaps she cannot handle the truth about her existence. She has already killed Rachel and now walks into Collins's office with blood on her body and a knife in her hand. Before Collins can react, Pilar attacks him. The film ends there.